Give it up for Charles and Nancy. Let's go.
Everybody's cooking tonight.
Yes, this one is yours.
Testing. Are we,
The mics are not the best, but we're going to do our best.
oh, okay.
Wonderful. It's so nice to see you again. It's been a couple of years, right? Okay, guys. So I'm just going to talk real loud, and they're going to be using the mics. It's already on. They tell me.
Is it already on?
It's just a little bit.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Can you all back there hear me?
There we go. Amazing. Okay, y'all. So it's been a little while since I talked to you. It's so wonderful to see you again. This is amazing. It's always an honor. I want to start this one off by asking each of you about your acting journey. How did you get involved in acting?
You want to start?
Yeah.
I was always an actor. You know, high school, get in front of the class, tried to be a funny guy. Then I went in the Navy, and, I was getting books on acting. Went back home to Niagara Falls, and this friend of mine was shooting films in a Brownie camera. So we made our own movies. We both went on to Hollywood. I was still on board the ship. He was off trying to be a star. So then I went over to Cal State, got a degree, did a lot of stage work, and then we did this Halloween thing, and I was already a little bit established, and the rest of it's history.
Were you at Cal State LA?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was there.
That's where I went to school.
Really, when?
Well, when I went back to grad school,
Oh.
which was in 2010.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I was an old person when I went to grad school. But that was a great theater department. Did you major in theater?
Yeah, it was pretty good. So I was there, and it had to be 68, 69,
Yeah, it was like a
70.
new school.
Yeah, and it was a lot of good instructors.
Yeah.
And at that time, of course, everything changes. So, but I went on to do theater and did quite a bit of it. I'm glad I did.
Yeah, well, I started out in theater too. The first part that I remember having was in Sunday school when I was about 5 or 6, and I played the littlest angel in a play called The Littlest Angel. And it was only because I had this loud voice at age 5. They thought, okay, we'll give her, I didn't know how to read that well, I don't think. I had to memorize the lines. But I could memorize lines pretty fast. And then I just kept on doing it in elementary school, all through elementary school. I had all these parts because I had the biggest voice, So, and then I studied in college. I went on to study theater as an undergraduate. And then I was tired of the snow. I was in Chicago. So then I came out to LA. And I think I've lived in LA almost 50 years. So I did a lot of theater in LA. And then I went down to USC where John Carpenter was a student, and Tommy Lee Wallace, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Right? I started working That was the first film I ever made, was at USC.
What was John like when he was a student?
Well, he was a nice guy, you know, he was pretty dedicated, and he was pretty, I mean, he had finished maybe the year before, but Tommy was still in grad school there. But he had gotten a job, I think, as at the school, running the film projectors. You know, showing. Anyway, he had access, is my point. And so he had a 35 millimeter film projector at his house, in his apartment, and he was showing. He'd invite all his friends over. He was showing these, you know, beautiful old film prints borrowed from the university. You know, so that's where I got introduced to all of John's heroes, John Ford, and you know all the big classic filmmakers from the 30s and the 40s. And you know, it's one thing to watch a 35 millimeter film in a movie theater on a big screen that's like way over there. It's another to have it like 8 feet away from it. It's just such an immersive experience. Of course, now home entertainment, I don't know how big your TV screen is now. They're pretty big, right? But back then, I was just like so impressed that, you know, this guy could be showing a 35 millimeter film in his apartment. But he was, you know, he was a really good filmmaker then. You know, he was really dedicated to the craft. Yeah.
We had several conversations, and he even when we did Halloween, he was open for suggestions with Donald, you know.
Yeah, Donald Pleasant.
Yeah, he was pretty an interesting guy. Yeah, but they would, and then we move on, and I think that helped him a lot, learning how to talk to actors.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did, somebody's trying to kill me, I think. Was a number one. She was a model. And John came to her as a television thing. Came to me and said, what do I do? what do I do? To make her comfortable. Just take it easy and, you know, make it easy. And that was a big help.
Yeah, he had a way of creating a set that was really productive. He has a great sense of humor, and he used it and employed it, and don't you think?
Yes.
You know, in addition to being really organized, really super organized, he just kept things going. You know, and he let people do their jobs, right? He didn't try to micromanage every single thing.
Right. So how did Halloween come into your life? Did he make you audition, or did he just say, you?
Well, I worked for the previous film that he made. I had a role in that, Assault on Precinct 13, you know that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, as I said, we were friends, and so he actually wrote that part
Really?
in Halloween, pretty much with me in mind.
So
I did not audition. Yeah.
No, I was on the Betty White series.
Mm-hmm.
Lasted 13 episodes. And I was a stunt double. You know, with the bra and the heels.
For Betty White?
Yes. And they paid me.
Very well.
No, at one time, men used to do the stunts for women. Way back. Way back. So I did 13 of those, and I met John. He just said, I was his cop.
Well, you were in Assault on Precinct 13.
Yes, we both
also,
were. Yeah.
Right?
The Fog, Escape from New York. And so it was sort of like part of his repertoire come here, I guess.
So he saw you as Betty White's stunt double.
Well, I
and
was
then
with
he
the
offered-
same director,
Yeah,
same agent.
I see. Okay.
And if it's foolish, foolish as it sounds, I got a lot of road rat in it, then. No, it was,
Sure.
But it ended after 13, and she was a very funny lady.
Betty White.
And yeah, she told me, "Oh my God, you have better legs than I do." Okay. Yeah, then we moved on.
I didn't know that.
I don't know, it's bad advertising.
Confessing things in here.
You heard it here first. And I read this online, so I don't know if it's true because it's online. Did you also work wardrobe on Assault on Precinct 13?
I did. And I was a set dresser also.
So you did everything.
I had many jobs.
Yeah.
It was a very low budget film.
Yeah.
And it was really an education for me. Because I still didn't know how films were made. They were pretty magical to me up until that point. And so that was really eye-opening to me, to work behind the camera and see just how incredibly complex the whole process is. Why anybody would want to make a movie is beyond me. They're just so complex. I mean, except with your cell phone, right? Make one with your cell phone.
Don't you still have some of the same costumes?
I do. Yeah.
What's your favorite?
The blanket that I wore in Halloween.
You know.
That plaid blanket.
You still have it?
I still have it. I love it. It's great. It's really great.
Annie's my favorite character
Thank
because
you.
we're both curly-headed girls, right?
Yeah.
And I too spill things on myself and get stuck in windows
Really?
or anywhere, just clumsy all around, right? So, what were some of the challenges on playing Annie and Sheriff Brackett?
I didn't really have any. He let me do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Donald was a little, I don't want to say wacko, but he was like those eyes of his would twist around, He's wonderful to work with. And his career was, we all know, did some good stuff.
Oh yeah, I was in awe. I was
Were you?
starstruck by Donald Pleasance because one of my favorite movies as a kid was The Great Escape.
Oh my, yeah.
And I just loved that movie, and I loved him in it because he had this scene with the tea bags, right, where he was trying to get the last of the tea out of this tea bag. For some reason, I've always sort of thought that, I don't know, it's like poor Donald Pleasance can't have a cup of tea, So I just thought he was fantastic. And then he did those Pinter things, which were so amazing too. So to meet him in person is like, oh my God, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be with him and work with him. You never knew quite what you were going to get.
Yeah. Well, I never had a scene with him. Right?
That's true, yeah.
So you fortunately
And
had that.
yeah, we did 2 together. And then I'm trying to think of the other stuff, and he went on to do more. I just saw a movie the other day, and Steve McQueen, it was the Sand Pebbles.
Sandpiper?
Sand Pebbles.
The Sand Pebbles.
He was absolutely wonderful. He wasn't that crazy sealed, He played a sailor that jumped on a Chinese gunboat. And if you get a chance to see it, he got nominated for an Oscar. But I mean, it was a wonderful movie. Candace Bergen.
Really?
The music, Robert Wise,
Yeah?
wonderful director.
Right.
And I'm surprised more younger people don't know that.
Well, he was a great actor who, his career was cut pretty short also.
Yeah.
So that was too bad.
Yeah. Love with a Proper Stranger.
But
Cincinnati Kid.
the best movie he ever made was Great Escape.
It was great. It was great.
And the tea. The tea.
Well, the thing about Steve McQueen in The Great Escape is he gets this motorcycle, right? And he's famous for having. I think they probably wrote that scene for him, right?
I'm sure, yeah.
Or he wrote it into his contract. I must ride a motorcycle. I don't know, but it was great.
Charles Bronson is, I worked with him 2 times. He was a pretty interesting fellow. Very quiet. Very quiet. He just do his work.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it, I remember we were doing a scene. I think it was Death Wish 2. And I screwed up. And I remember he looked at the director and he said, "That was my fault." I thought, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So, been quite
Pretty
a career.
generous, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say.
Do we have any audience questions right now? Right there.
Actually, I was curious if you had any stories from The Fog. I remember your scene in that movie. So.
Yeah, it's still a very good film.
Oh, absolutely.
Remember when we were in Chicago? I think you were there and they showed it at drive-in.
Yeah, it was the 25th anniversary of The Fog, and there was a convention in Chicago.
And they did
And it
it.
was summertime.
Everybody sat out in chairs. And
And there was one of those fabulous blow-up screens, silver screens.
Adrian Barbeau was.
We were outside in the parking lot. It was a beautiful summer evening, not too humid. That's the last time I saw that movie, I think.
Yeah.
And it was somebody's birthday. Was it your birthday?
It might have been.
When's your
Might have
birthday?
been. July 28th.
Yeah, it was your birthday.
Oh.
And it was a huge cake. And we sang happy birthday.
That's right. Now it's coming back.
Yeah.
Now it's coming
It was
back.
fun. It was really fun.
So what are your favorite memories from shooting on The Fog?
Working with Janet Leigh
Yeah.
and being in Point Reyes on the coast, which is the most, beautiful scenery in America is up there. It's hard to get to now because of all the rains. There's so much, there's so many mudslides. The road is closed half the time. But yeah, it was working with Janet Leigh and in that setting, and she was so fun. She was just so much fun. And I have a hard time acting in front of the camera because I'm so nervous. And she just was so generous and kind, and I was so relaxed all the time. It was wonderful.
You hear the story about, let's see, I want to say Laurence Olivier and Dustin Hoffman. You know that one?
No.
Well, they were doing work on his teeth.
Marathon Man.
It's a torture thing. And he went on 24 hours a day trying to get pain thing going. So Olivier said to him, "My dear boy, why don't you try acting?"
Yeah.
Those Limey guys, you gotta watch out for.
He was tough. Nancy, in Halloween 2, you do a cameo, what is pretty much, but you had a very important part. How did they get you to do that?
They called me up.
Were you game? Did you want to do it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was disappointed that I had, died. That was an inconvenience. Because otherwise, I could have been in a lot more of the franchise,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like Chuck. So, but I went back as a dead body,
Yeah.
did 3 hours of makeup for like 2 minutes or less of shooting. right?
And that
One
was,
take.
and that was him.
That was the last time I worked with Chuck, I think.
Thanks, we I'll tell you, the secret is don't get killed.
That's right, but I didn't know that. But I do remember saying to John when he was writing The Fog and he wanted me to be in it. I said, I'll be in this movie, but I don't want to die. But of course, there's not been a franchise so far.
Just a really terrible
We
remake.
noticed that.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Halloween 3?
Sure.
So, how did that come into your life, aside from being part of this franchise for 2 movies already?
Well, that's just sort of what it was. But so the idea was to create. Originally, one of the ideas about this Halloween franchise was to create a different story every year that had some kind of Halloween theme. You all know this story, I guess. Who's a Halloween 3 fan here? Halloween 3.
Tom Atkins.
Tom Atkins.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I played the part of Tom Atkins' wife, and so that's how that happened. And Tommy Lee Wallace wrote the script, and I thought it was a really terrific script. I really, really liked it, and I was disappointed that it didn't achieve the success that now it really enjoys.
Yeah.
But at the time, there'd been 2 movies with Michael Myers in the movie and that story continuing on, and that was enough to cement in the mind of the spectators. This is what it's about.
Yes.
This is what we need. The story that we need to continue. So it took that path, and you know.
Come on, to become successful.
Oh yeah, now it is.
Oh,
Now it certainly is. But it's a really fun story with a pretty powerful message that holds up. You know. Yeah.
You do realize you're the only one that's in all 3 of them, the first 3.
No, I actually never thought about that. But isn't Chuck in all 3? No, he's not. You're not in Halloween 3.
2,
Just
when
you.
they did 1 and 2, and that's for a long time later. I was the sheriff of the town. Now I'm a nighttime janitor almost, you know.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And I said, fine.
yeah.
Paid me a lot of money.
Yeah, you had a good time. You had fun.
Yeah, I was in North Carolina.
Yeah,
And I thought, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
yeah.
That was one of the highlights of Kills, right? It was Kills,
Yeah,
Halloween
Kills.
Kills. That all the people, actors, not just characters, that they brought back for that movie, including yourself.
Yeah.
What was it like returning to that all those years later?
I just jumped in the car.
You're like, they paid me a lot of money and I did
When I got the residual, I was fainted.
Yeah, you took the Olivier approach. Why don't you just try acting? Just not think about it too much.
I just thought, no, this has got to be wrong. It's got to be wrong. But it wasn't. And I went, wow.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was very good.
Yes.
I mean, across from the Michael Myers film, the original concept was going to be different stories. You're the only one in the
That's
first 3.
well, that's true. Yeah,
Just unique.
And it just didn't
I
catch
had
on.
never thought about that.
I think Halloween 3 though has come into its own right. Like you're saying, I think it's huge. Yeah. Finally.
Yeah.
Did you talk to them about your art?
No.
Why don't you talk to
Why
them?
don't you tell us?
Then I'm a sculptor. I make sculpture. It's one of the things that I've been doing since I stopped making movies. And I love to mash things together. I collect a lot of different objects, mash them together, and I weave them together. So I make a kind of new material that's very pliable and flexible, and then I build objects out of that material, right? So it's a lot of fun. But I also teach school, so I'm a professor, and that takes up a lot of my time. I don't get to do it that much, but now I'm on summer vacation, so my intention is to build one sculpture this summer. I have to see how far I get.
You're on the run.
Yeah.
Do you keep your sculptures or do you sell them or?
I sell them when I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If someone was interested in buying
I
an original piece, how would we know
Well, I
about this?
don't have an online presence, but you could call Chris. I suppose I haven't gotten that far. I think the last show I had was in 2019. It was just before the pandemic, and I have the pandemic sort of threw a wrench into everybody's life, right?
Right.
So I'm just kind of crawling out of that,
Yeah.
finding time to do it. It's a lot of fun though to work with your hands and make stuff.
Do you have a
Yeah.
favorite piece that you've ever made or?
Yes, and it's hanging on my dining room wall, and it's not for sale.
Would you like to share what it is and why it's your favorite, or not really?
It's just it's an abstract sculpture, but there's some kind of spark in it, and it looks like it's flying. It looks like a giant mutant fly on the wall that's flying. That's the best way I can think to describe it. And it's about this big, and it's probably got over 1,000 pieces of 1,000 different objects in it, all mashed together. So when you mash stuff together and you condense it and condense it and condense it, it takes on this kind of mineral quality. And that's what I kind of look for, right? That's what I like.
That's amazing.
But you can Google my name and you can see some of my artwork online. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. Chuck told me today he has a set of paintbrushes and some canvas.
They're all
but
sitting there.
He has a set of paint, yeah.
I was going to ask, Chuck, do you have any passion hobbies that you like to
Well,
pursue?
before I got married,
That was your hobby.
yeah, I liked carving wood. And I had a lot of tools. In clay, I like working with clay. I like the molding part too. I mean, I thought about getting what do you call it, the spin?
For the clay.
Pottery wheel? A wheel, yeah.
Thought about that.
I was just at the Heard Museum this morning. Have
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys ever been there? Looking at the pottery of Maria Martinez from the San Ildefonso Pueblo. It's just breathtaking.
Oh, wow.
Just breathtaking.
Do they paint it afterwards?
They paint it and then they fire it.
Oh,
And she's famous for having this very special black pottery, right? So if you haven't been there, you're in for a treat. It's just a spectacular show.
one of my favorites is Singer Sargent.
Oh yeah?
I like his stuff. I have a painting hanging in my room.
Really?
And I brought a nurse in, that's visiting me. And I said, what do you think of that? It's a woman walking down the street, wrapped up in a gown, with two guys looking at her. And you don't know whether she's coming or going.
Ah.
So she said to me, I feel intimidated by it. And I said, okay. That's what art's about. But he's one of my favorite painters. I'd have to say Pollock. I told Nancy I want to do children's stuff. Tree.
Paint with a children's mind. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a pipe, a truck driving.
You want to get into that state, I think, if you're making any kind of art, but it's hard to take yourself there the older you get. or
It's honest, kids are honest
Yeah,
when
Yeah.
when they do stuff. Big sun,
yeah.
lightning. It's just honest.
okay, well, the next time you show up, we're expecting
A whole
you to
show.
bring some of this. Yeah,
I have a pile of it, actually.
you do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
you need to
I
get
have a
Chris
parrot
to-
that I drew with the one line,
Wow.
and it's a swan becoming a parrot.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty. I look at it, I said, did I do that? I made furniture. I made, unfortunately, I gave a bunch away. I have this wonderful cowboy boot. It's carved out of mesquite.
Wow.
I didn't make it, but I grabbed it when I had a few bucks. The detail is incredible. I just, in admiration of people that can make things. And mechanics. I look at mechanics and I go, where do they get the position, the patience? Because me, after 5 minutes, I'm going, that's it. Plumbers, carpenters,
Yeah.
People with skills.
yeah.
Skills.
Patience.
Yeah.
So where does patience come in acting for you guys? I know it's a lot of hurry up and wait in film.
That's
Do you have
exact-
trouble being patient? Or is it just like, this is what it is?
I think I'm much more patient having been a mom for a long time. And that's what taught me patience. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you really have to cultivate it.
Yeah.
If you're ever going to speak to your children, ever. You do. You just have to just wait and wait and wait. But I have two glorious children who are all grown up now, right? And it thrills me that they want to come and spend time with me and hang out, and it's like, okay, it's all good now. It's all great. So yes, that's a long time to wait, for that experience, but it's really worth it.
For both of you, actually, kind of in that same vein, did you have more fun early on in like Halloween when you guys had to be so involved moving the lights? You guys were casting crew and everything, or when it was probably a little less hurry and wait, it's harder work, or was it better when it got a little better and you were there to act?
No, I really love working behind the camera much more than being in front of it. So for me, it was like a godsend. Because I was too nervous. If all I was doing was acting, it was like, oh no.
I find little things around the house that you can do and go, how did I do that? It's taking the beats to do it and go, wow. It's amazing what you can do if you really put your mind to it, or whatever's left of your body, so it's,
But when you were waiting on a set to go on,
yeah.
what did you do to
I
keep yourself calm and
Nothing.
nothing? you were
I
just one of-
messed up more scenes. First scene I ever did was on a TV show. And I think I had a line like, gonna quit. Something like that. And trying it the 8 ways. So they're all standing around here. The grips. And I walk in and I stumble through a line. In the light line. And I just looked at everybody and went, okay, on to the next one. But then I had a scene with, I'm trying to think of his name now, not the Irreverent, it's the Revenant, won the Oscar a couple years ago.
The Revenant.
Yeah, he played Tommy Lee Jones, played the guy who shot the people in Argentina, in New Mexico someplace, and they executed him. It's the first time that happened. And I could not remember the lines. It
What did
was-
you do?
I heard them back there going, Jesus, when's he gonna get it right?
Well, now in movie making, apparently, you don't have to memorize your lines. The lines are just there, like it is in television.
Yeah.
You don't have to have your lines memorized.
I know Brandon's big on that. So much so
Well,
it's,
Malcolm told me that's what he does.
was he?
He didn't memorize his lines for the last few films that he's made. He loves it. He says it gives him a lot of freedom.
When Brando works, he has them all over people. It's like, he's always looking away. I go back and forth with him. You know, I mean, sometimes he's unique and wonderful. And other times, I think he's a bum.
Well, he's a human being. He's a human being.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned how you got into acting, but I was kind of curious. You guys have done so many John Carpenter films. So I was just curious, did you try out for each one of those? Did he write those parts for you? Or once you're in the loop, he's like, hey, come on, join me over here.
I think it's once you're in the loop. I mean, he had this idea of having a repertory company, and John's extremely practical. It's, he sits down to write. It's a tough job, so he's not going to waste time dreaming up the perfect name for someone. He'll just think of one of his friends that he knows. Okay, that's the character, the name of the character, and maybe it's easier when he writes to have somebody in mind. It's easier to create the character. In other words, he's making choices, a zillion choices a minute. So the faster he can make choices, the faster the process goes. And I really think that's how it happened, and why this whole idea of a repertory company emerged. But then at a certain point in his career, it was more out of his control.
Yeah.
Than
The studio.
The studio weighed in on a lot of it.
They wanted to make all the choices.
Yeah,
Don't forget the hand.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Lines.
Oh, lines. Yeah, I never did that.
I did. Oh, yeah. It's like,
That's funny.
So
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it. He's just extremely practical.
Annie's death scene in Halloween's pretty involved in the car. Do you remember any of John's direction to you shooting that scene? Did you block it? How did you do that?
We shot that scene really so fast, mainly because it involved a lot of fog machine, and that, yeah. So I had to scream a few times, and I really wanted it over as quickly as possible. So I think he did it in like 2 takes, something like that. And I don't know, I would have to go back and look at it to see how many different angles there were. Maybe there was more than one camera rolling at the time, I'm not sure. But it really was over pretty quickly because it was, probably not the best thing to be breathing. Right? Yeah.
yeah.
From like an outside perspective, your roles were so perfect as like a fan watching it. From you, when you see it, like an artist likes to always tinker with their work. Is there something in each role or a main role that you think, man, I wish I could change that, or if I could go back, I would have done this different? Or are you ever just satisfied and think, okay, this is good, I'm happy? Being an artist, I know it's never probably like that, but is there anything that sticks out you would like to change?
I think what's important is to give the audience attention, I mean, they see things and feel things, and if you're pushing too hard, they have emotions. You look at the movies in the 40s and the 50s, the 60s, they had stories. I mean, you know, remember Story? Teacher would sit you down and go, now Billy and Jack walked up the... But, you know, there's not much of that around now. Yeah.
But would you change anything if you could about your performances if you had an opportunity?
Would I?
I mean, did you ever ask for another take?
I'm pretty happy with what I
rarely
did.
that.
I'm pretty happy with what I did.
Yeah. You have to trust that the director knows what they want, right?
Well, they build the chord together. And when you really get fortunate, you all sort of seem
Yeah.
together.
I think I've just had to accept the fact that whatever I did, it was good enough. You know, because you're absolutely right. There's always more, right? So there's always
You did
more.
great, but like I said,
Well,
as
thank
the
you.
artist, I know how it's never done kind of
Right.
feeling.
It pretty much is never done.
Yeah.
But like when I make sculpture, how do you know when it's done?
Yeah.
You- I know when it's done when I start taking things away, right? And then,
Yeah.
'cause you can, as Chuck says, you can overdo it
Yeah.
really fast.
Make it
I
work.
mean, yeah,
You have to make space for everyone else.
You got an audience
See?
out there.
Yeah.
They're not stupid.
Yeah.
They have emotions, feelings. And if you go too far, you take that away from them.
Yeah.
You know, silent moment.
But you don't always know. You don't always know how much is enough, just enough, right?
They can always cut it though.
Well, that's true. They can put it on the cutting floor real
That
fast.
reminds me of a joke. The guy in the Hollywood Reporter is like a magazine that everybody's in acting. And the guy put a full-page ad on the back for everyone that wants to see film on me. He was sitting in a garbage can with film draped over his head.
That's funny.
It's one way to get him.
Any last questions before we let him go? Anyone? All right. Well, I got one wrap-up question. What do you guys want your legacy to be? You want it to be Halloween, art, your children?
Well,
That's a tough one.
I haven't thought about that.
It's a tough one.
I think it just will be what it is. But, you know, whatever it is. And I feel like I've lived so many different paths, and they kind of weave together in strange ways, and it'll just continue to be that way. I think, whatever it is. But filmmaking is interesting because it does continue. It is preserved. So one little aspect of my life is that. And maybe that's what will be preserved because it is on film. On the other hand, maybe an art piece I made, you know, might survive. Who knows? Yeah. Or a book I wrote on text analysis. Who knows?
Do you sell that at your table?
No, not for sale. But you know, it's you just don't know. You just never know. You never know because the things that you think are going to be here forever and ever and ever. Those are the
Exactly.
You know, and also,
what sticks.
It's subjective, right? Yeah.
What sticks and what dissolves and floats away. You really don't have much control over that.
He did the best he could with what he had.
that's your legacy.